week was Hannah's 10th birthday. She's now 10 years old. She's in double digits. And so we went to Alley Cats yesterday. I don't know if you know what Alley Cats is. Let me explain it to you. It's like, it's Chuck E. Cheese on steroids, right? You go in there. It's Las Vegas for kids. And you go in there, and there are bright lights. And this one was in Hearst, and it's amazing. And let me tell you, it was not just Las Vegas for kids, it was Las Vegas for me. And so we go in there and there's laser tag and there's bowling and rock climbing and go-karts. And so this competitive thing in me, which I have all but suppressed, y'all, I've all but suppressed it. And we're at this little kid's birthday party. There's like 5-year-olds and 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds. And we're getting in the laser tag arena. And I'm like, it's on, And so Justice, I told Amanda, I said, listen, I'm going to watch over Justice. As soon as they closed the doors, Justice was left in the dust. I'm just up, I'm on the top, and I'm sniping people, and he's coming around crying, So anyways, I had to kind of check myself. So this competitive spirit, translates over into the go-karts. And so, I'm standing there, and there are these posters that explain the different various karts, and it was just a lot of words, and it was Saturday, and I wasn't in the mood for reading all the words. And so there were rookie karts and double karts and regular karts. So I'm trying to, figure out which one to go in. And the rookie karts are these colored karts, and the kids were excited about the idea of Mario Kart and how they were going to drive these karts. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, Dad's going to get out there, and I'm going to show them some Mario Kart. And so the kids get out there, and I asked the attendant, I was like, can I get in one of those rookie karts? And she kind of looks at me funny. She's like, I guess if you can fit. And I was like, well, of course I can fit. It's a go-kart. I was just in one of them. So I get out there, and I didn't realize that a rookie kart was for the little kids, And I immediately regret the decision. It's like Chris Farley living in a van down by the river. So I get in this thing, and I'm sitting there. My knees are up to my cheekbones, and they have to bring out the extra. The guy just kind of looks at me. He brings out one of those extra straps, because I literally can't fit in it. And then the flag comes down, and they're like, phew, phew, phew. And I'm like, meh. And they're going, and I'm like, okay, either I'm too heavy for this thing, or I just got the slow one, or both. I don't know. All I know is I'm getting overlapped. And so I finally just stop in the middle, and I just wait for the kids to come, because I had a moment where I thought, okay, I can either try to drift and do all the cool Fast and Furious things, which obviously is not going to happen, or I can just shift my perspective, and I can just try to enjoy the time with my 10-year-old on her birthday, right? And the reason I share all that is this, because I think sometimes in the Christian life, what we like to do is to come into church, and we just want to show off how much we know, how long we've been a Christian, how long we've been a member of Tate Springs, how long we've been a deacon, how long we've done this, how long we've taught Sunday school, and we want to flex, 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 and we want to get out there and show all these little kids how amazing we are at laser tag or golf cart. When in reality, all they really want to do, these younger believers, is just hang out with us. They just want us to be there with them. They don't really care how many points we score or anything like that. And Paul's saying, are we going to treat the Christian life and the church competitively, or are we going to restrain the strength that we have, which, by the way, is true strength? When you restrain the strength that you have so that another believer has the ability to grow up in the cathedral of redwoods of this church, and you're not stifling them because you're trying to show off and take all the roots for yourself, listen, they can grow up and be a part of it too. And that is the image that Paul is giving us here. And so this answer, of course, brings a whole lot of other questions. Because when we talk about, well, okay, Pastor Jude, I'm following you. I know that there are times where I need to restrain the strength of the knowledge that I've accumulated over the course of my Christian walk. But what about whenever we see someone doing something dangerous? What about when we see a believer believing something that is contradictory to our faith? And we see the posts on social media that's actually harming the kingdom of God. And I know they're a part of this church. How do I deal with that, Pastor Jared? I'm glad you asked. Some scholars, they have developed this idea of theological triage. And what it's meant by that, the word triage means to sort. It means to sort out what is most pressing and what is least pressing. And it comes from the idea of someone who's wounded. And if you're in an emergency room and all these people are coming in and they're hurt, You know, if someone comes in with a paper cut and someone comes in and they've lost their leg, obviously triage means I'm going to deal with the person who lost their leg before I deal with the person who has a paper cut. In the Christian life, we also have to do that. We have to look at issues and we have to say, okay, that's not an issue that is really of primary importance and it ought not to cause disunity between us. But then there are some things where we're like, listen, that's something that actually is harmful to the Christian faith. So how do we sort these out? Well, there are really 3 different levels or 3 different tiers to understanding how this works. And so I'm going to walk you through these really quickly, just so that you kind of know how at least my mind operates and how our minds ought to operate. The first one is first level issues. First level issues are religion defining issues. These are truths that are essential to the Christian faith. So the nature of God is essential to the Christian faith. If you do not believe that God is triune in nature, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, then you are by definition not a Christian. If you don't believe in the physical bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ, by definition, you are believing a different religion than Christianity. If you do not believe in the authority of Scripture, these are religion-defining issues. This is why there are groups like Mormons, for example, who are not considered Christian because they have a fundamental different understanding of Jesus Christ. And so it is a different religion altogether, same as Jehovah's Witness, and there are others that use the same terms but have different definitions. These are first level issues, and these are the issues that are of most importance. It is similar to someone coming in and they have a major issue going on and we have to address it. The second level issues, these are issues that are denominational defining issues. Denominational defining issues. These are essential issues, but they are not necessarily core to the religion or to the faith of Christianity. And so these are issues like baptism. Christianity does teach baptism, but the mode of baptism is what I'm talking about here. And so I've been talking a lot about my different denominational upbringing, and you hear me talk about that from time to time. They had a different mode of baptism, but that mode of baptism doesn't necessarily mean a different religion, if that makes sense. And so the Lord's Supper, we believe in a symbolic, but there are some who believe in things like consubstantiation or transubstantiation, which essentially some people believe that it actually becomes the body and blood of Christ. Some believe it's just with the body and blood, but yet symbolic. And so there are all these different beliefs. These are not religion-defining issues, but they are denomination-defining issues. Church government as well. All right, so these are second-level issues. And the third and final level issue, these are local church defining issues. And essentially what happens is you tend to choose a local church in your Christian faith, in your denomination, based on some of these things. And these are things like end-time views or worship style, things like that. Now, I'll share all that to say this. What we ought to do as Christians is make sure that we have our priorities in order whenever we are deciding when to flex and when not to flex. Because if there's someone in this church who doesn't believe in the resurrection of Jesus, that's whenever we need to flex the strength that the Lord has given us with his grace to say, no, that's actually a big, serious issue. But if someone is getting in a debate about worship style, hey, that's not something to divide a church over, even though, by the way, that is usually the issue that does define and split churches. I get emails all of the time, had one this past week, that ask me questions that are third-level issues, but sometimes are treated like first-level issues. And so, so there are questions about, do we use hymnals or do we use a screen? And sometimes the questions are not only questions, but sometimes the questions are, I'm going to consider this church holy or not holy based on your worship style, for example. And I brought something that I got and framed this past week that I wanted to show you. And you're not going to be able to see it all, but you're going to see enough of it. And this, you're going to see enough to know. This is a Christian denominations family tree, all right? There's a glare. I'm going to shine this in some of y'all's eyes. I do that with Amanda sometimes just for the fun of it when we're driving. But you can see up here, you have the original ancient Israelite tradition. And as it goes down, I know not everyone can see it, but as it goes down, you can see how it just branches out. This is us right here, this little blue one right there, by the way. right here, Southern Baptist Convention. This is us, all right? And so when you look at this, it all branches out, and some of these issues are religion-defining issues, because as you get here, you see the Church of Latter-day Saints, and of course you have Islam and Judaism right here. But sometimes these different, sorry Ed, sometimes these different, shining in his eyes, these different issues are not, we split not because they're religion-defining or even denomination-defining. We split because of our preference. And we split, and we split, and we split, and we split. And what happens is kingdom dollars and kingdom resources and kingdom strength, it's a cluster of redwoods that's looking at each other, and our roots are supposed to be entangled with one another so that when the storms come against us, we hold on to one another. But instead we say, you know what? I don't like that little piece of bark and the color of it that's on the side there. You know what? We want you to be in a different cluster. And suddenly what you have are all these different clusters that are not stronger but weaker for no reason at all. That's what Paul's talking about here when he's talking about what it means to be strong. And he wants us to know that, yes, there are things that do divide us, but we have to make sure that we're not being divided over things that we don't need to be divided about. That we ought to find reasons to be united, not divided. And so our challenge is to know when to hold fast, when to hold out a hand, when to hold out our peace, and to prioritize the well-being and spiritual growth of others above our own personal preference and liberties. And so whenever we know, yes, I have the freedom to do this, but I'm not going to do that because it's a third-level issue, and it's just not that big of a deal. You know, I have never pastored a church until I pastored Tate Springs where I liked the music. I'm just going to be honest with you. The music was different in the other churches I've had the privilege to pastor. And but I thought, you know, this is the way the music was whenever God called me here. And it seemed like it was what the people were okay with. And so I just thought, you know what, I'm not going to force my personal preference on this church because the music is theologically accurate. And so sometimes we can serve in places that our personal preferences might not be where we want them to be, but it's no reason to be divided over it. And so strength isn't always shown by what we can do, but sometimes by what we choose not to do, by that restraint. Here's a second insight that Paul gives us here. True strength is not just peacefully holding back, but proactively building others up. So, in other words, Paul's saying, hey, listen, I know sometimes you want to hold back, you want to restrain, this is what strength is, but it's not just passively taking a step back and saying, well, I'm just not going to do anything about it then. No, it's seeing the gap as you are exercising restraint and stepping into it to find ways to proactively build others up. So look with me at verse 2 of chapter 15. Each of us is to please his neighbor for his good, to his edification. And so this moves us beyond this mere avoidance of causing offense, and it propels us to the pursuit of doing good for others. Look at that word please. Each of us is to please his neighbor. It's not people pleasing. It carries the idea of striving to agree with. In other words, trying to find ways and reasons to agree and to be united within your community, rather than reasons to be divided. Do you realize that we live in a culture in Christianity that tries to find more reasons to be divided than to be united? I'm telling you, it's not going to last at this level, at this pace rather. We constantly try to find reasons to be divided rather than to be united. And Paul's saying we ought to please our neighbor for his good, for his edification. That word edification there has its roots in the world of architecture and construction. So it's the idea of building. You know, some years ago I read Will Smith's biography. I was interested in it because of the whole slapping thing at one of the award shows. And but he turned out he had written it before that, so he didn't even talk about it in it. But and he starts out the first chapter, and it's called The Wall. And he gives an illustration, a metaphor for something that just governed his whole life. And he says when he was little, his dad owned a shop, and he had this wall that was falling apart, and so he put a big hole in it. He destroyed the part that was broken, and he hired his two sons to rebuild the wall. And by hiring, he just told them what to do and didn't give them any money for it. And he said, Will Smith says it was 12 foot high and 20 foot long. And he said he gave them the bricks, he gave them the mortar, and they had to mix it. And he said, work on it. And so these 2 young boys, about 10, 11 years old, brick by brick, begin building this wall. And he said, it didn't matter if I was sad, if I was mad, if I was sick, if I was tired, I had to build that wall. And he said, I complained about it every day. And I let my dad know how much I hated building that wall. And he said, finally, his dad came to him and said, stop complaining about the wall. He said, don't think about the wall, think about the bricks. It's not about the wall, it's about the bricks. And then Will Smith says, and I brought it because I wanted to get it right and read it. He says, when I focused on the wall, the job felt impossible, never ending. But when I focused on one brick, everything got easy. I knew I could lay one brick well. And so he begins to talk about, in the rest of his book, about laying brick by brick, brick by brick. And whatever you think about Will Smith doesn't matter. But the idea is this, that this building, this steady pace of construction, brick by brick, is the image that Paul's giving us here when he talks about edification. Because when you compare that to the mindset of Pharisaism, it's entirely different. It's entirely different. And that's where he's going with this, because he wants us to understand what it means to truly edify one another. His exhortation to pursue, keep that in your mind, because his exhortation to pursue what leads to mutual edification is a call to the church to be a construction site for the soul. He wants people to come in here, and for us, and for them on us, and us for them, to build brick by brick, to edify patiently the souls of one another. And by choosing to do this, we offer kindness, and we provide a moment of teaching when needed, and we contribute to the sturdy, enduring edifice of the faith community. And so sometimes strength is restraining the strength and not flexing, but sometimes it's flexing, but in the appropriate way, in other words. But how do we do this? Well, look back with me at chapter 13. If you were taking notes, you're probably also realizing that we didn't finish chapter 13, so let's finish it real quick. And I want you to look with me, because Paul gives us the picture, and then we'll be done, of what it looks like to edify fellow believers. Look with me at verse 8 of 13. Owe nothing to anyone except to love one another. For he who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law. And then in verse 9, he anchors that idea to Matthew 22, when Jesus summarized all of the commandments up into 2, the greatest and the second greatest. He says, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love God and love other people. And then in verse 10, love does no wrong to a neighbor. It is the fulfillment of the law. So, love. The picture there is, if you have a car payment, you pay that car payment every month, and there's an end to it. It's the similar idea there, but the difference is this: to owe one another love, and to actually enjoy making the payment, and also for there not to be just a 5 or a 6 year note on it. It's just something that's always, you're just, man, I can't wait till the 30th comes so I can owe someone love. That's what he means. And so when he talks about love, he's talking about loving in that kind of context, but he also talks about another aspect here, starting in verse 11. He says, do this, do what? Love in this way, to fulfill the law, to owe one another, knowing the time that it is already the hour for you to awaken from sleep, for now salvation is nearer to us than when we believed. So it's not just love, but it's urgent love. It's urgent love. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road, because the Pharisees, a Pharisaic mindset. What do we mean by a Pharisaic mindset? It is a mindset that only cares about behavioral modification rather than heart change. It looks at someone and says, well, that person is out of step, so I'm gonna speak to them in such a way or act in such a way where I'm going to fix what I see at the surface level, but it doesn't care about what's going on in the roots. And so you may get someone to say the right things or even to do the right things, but for the wrong reasons. And you may get them to do that very quickly with Pharisaism. You can legalize things sometimes. You can make it part of the law. You can make it part of the regulations. You can make it part of the covenant of the church. And you can force these kinds of things. But what he's saying here is this: that's not the kind of urgency that Paul's talking about. He doesn't say urgency to the end. He says urgency in the means, urgency to love. Urgency to the love. And so the urgency is applied to the idea of love here. And this is where the idea of the brick by brick nature comes into play. Because so often in Christian life, we look at young new believers and we just expect them to just be walking like Jesus immediately out of their proverbial womb. They've been born again and we want them to exactly be perfect. But you know what? They're babies. They don't even know how to crawl yet. They've just been born. And we would never look at a baby and say, go in the kitchen and make me a sandwich. It just doesn't work that way. So there's got to be some kind of margin of grace that we have for one another where we understand, yes, the tension of being in a fellowship together is to have the right levels, the hold on to the right doctrines, but also to understand these third and fourth and fifth level things. There's room for people to grow. And so there are two things real quick that I just want to give you to think about, just to put this into practice, things that I've seen. The first one is this. So in other words, how are we supposed to practice this kind of urgent love? The first one is this: engage in acts of service without expectation of return. Let me say that again. Engage in acts of service without expectation of return. I've pastored for 20 years. One of the things that I've seen in all these churches that the Lord has given me the opportunity to pastor is this: people who will give you the shirt off their back, but they have this invisible string attached when they do it. And nothing kills a Christian culture in a church more than people who do things for other people, but for their own glory. I've seen people in staff, in leadership, and I've seen people grow their own kingdoms, and they do this kinds of thing. And what happens is it divides the church because they're not doing it for the Lord's kingdom, they're doing it for their own. And so when we love urgently, we're not trying to get people to do what we want them to do for us. We're trying to get people to be holy and edified for the glory of the Lord. Here's a second thing: patiently mentor and disciple other people. Some of us are missing out on a remarkable opportunity to be discipled and to disciple other people. We have things called small groups and discipleship groups, or D groups, that we have put a lot of energy and resources and time into to develop here. And by the way, it is the thing that we not only say at the end of every service, but the thing, some of Jesus' last words were about discipleship, to go and make disciples. And so the question that I have for you as we get ready to close this sermon out is this: are you actively engaging in the brick by brick edification of discipling people?